Welcome to Life Force Canada in our weekly connection call. I'm Karen of the family class. And speaking of family, we so appreciate our Life Force Canada family who have the courage to stand up, take action, do their own research, and reclaim their own authority as a living man and woman. Thank you for joining us on an Easter Monday. No one is going to fool us on April 1st, right? We know who we are. We are not a person. We are not a dead entity, a fictional character. We are living men and women living in our true sovereign capacity, taking back our crown, our own divine mind, and reclaiming our inheritance. As Susan Briley states, we do not need to get rid of our straw man. We just need to control it. So the more we step into self-governance and become self-responsible with our addictions, our patterns, our beliefs, our own shadows, our sense of self-worth, that is so key, and our life purpose, the more this reality transforms into higher levels of experience and the new earth is created. Yay. We cannot escape the inner work. Now, for those of you who are in Calgary, I know there's quite a few here that are from across Canada, but those in Calgary, I'm going to be offering an 8-week meditation class in my home starting on Thursday, April 4th. I did send out an email. So just if you're interested and you haven't received the email or it just went to your spam folder, just reply to the email that you received today for the national call here, and I'll send you some information. Knowing the power of your mind is how you release the fear of authority so that you can step into your true sovereign power. Okay, so before I introduce Doug Force, I do have an amazing announcement. We reached maximum capacity at our last event, well, last month. So we're really excited to announce that our next Sovereign Living Conference is going to be September 14th and 15th this year. You know, the road less traveled, you've heard that expression before. Well, I believe that this is going to be a road that more are going to begin to travel on as they awaken to the truth. And as consciousness shifts, more and more people are going to be wanting to take action and be seeking solutions on how to exit the public jurisdiction and cross the bridge into private sovereign living, where the people hold the power. At our event too, we've also increased the event space to expand our trade show portion of that event. So at the Sovereign Living Conference in September, we want to support and give you an amazing opportunity to showcase, to share, to sell and expand your products or services that you have that are for the people. So many people are saying that this is the best freedom conference in Canada. That's very exciting. We're so grateful. You can now book your tickets on our website at lifeforcecanada.ca. We do have sponsor spots available, which offers an amazing opportunity to advertise your trade, your business, and of course, support our mission, which is the freedom of the people. So we're going to be talking more about the conference in the weeks ahead. Okay, tonight, before we begin, let's all just take a deep breath in of life, force, energy, and reminding ourselves that we are not our fears. We have incredible power inside of us to change our reality. Tonight, we have Doug Force, founder and chief researcher for the Myth is Canada. He is here to remind us that we, the people, own the land. He's been traveling and teaching the true history of Canada for several years and remind everyone that all we have to do is say no together, right? And really claim what is ours. I remember Doug created a 4-part miniseries. It was in 2021 on the myth is Canada. I'm like, yes, someone who believes what I believe. And I thought that we really needed to have him here. And I know he's been full on, but finally in 2024, we've got him here. Welcome to Life First Canada, Doug.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a long journey for me as well, especially since the pandemic and the bioweapons that they decided to roll out during that pandemic, and here we are, 4 years later,
Yes.
uh, no worse for wear, and winning, and that's the wonderful part of this. I'm actually here in Alberta. I'm up in Edmonton for another week or two at a friend's place. He's been good enough to throw me an extra bedroom in his house. So coming to you from there tonight. I'll be back on the road again in about 2-3 weeks once the weather clears up a little bit.
I'm going to give you the floor, and then once you're complete, we're going to open it up for a Q&A to all of our listeners.
So the first thing I want to do is for everybody in the audience tonight to see, because people get hung up on what does allodial mean? What does it actually mean? And it's the highest definition of land ownership a man or a woman can have. This is from a legal dictionary. It says free, not subject to the rights of any lord or superior, owned without obligation of vassalage or fealty, the opposite of feudal, a description given to the outright ownership of land. I also explain it when I do my seminars, is that I also explain to people that you own the land from the soles of your feet to the center of the earth, and from the top of your head to the outer reaches of the atmosphere. So what I'm going to do right quickly here is I'm just going to show you a quick map of the Western provinces. I thought you might find this interesting because really what this is, all that gray area, you see all the gray, as we can
Yeah.
see here, all this gray, those are little tiny squares. And each one of those squares is 160 acres. And between 1872 and 1930, within these little gray squares, they issued 625,000 crown patents, and each patent was 160 acres. So do the math. So if we look over here, this is Manitoba is the first one over here onto the right. So it's about half the province, little less than half the province. Saskatchewan is about almost 2/3, and Alberta it goes all the way up into the Peace River Valley and so forth in Alberta, and it crosses the border into British Columbia. And when it crosses the border into British Columbia, those are the rail lines and so forth. So you get the idea. 625,000 land patents were issued in a period of about 50 years in Western Canada. Now, Eastern Canada also has crown patents. The only province that doesn't have an actual crown patent is Newfoundland, because they didn't enter into Canada until the 1949, after the Dominion had ended. Several years after the Dominion had ended. That's 18 years later. And so they never were issued any crown patents in Newfoundland. I've seen them as far back in Nova Scotia in the 1700s, 1790s. In Quebec, they have crown patents. And it's funny because Quebec has two jurisdictions of law. They have the civil law, which what they use for day to day. But when they lost the war on the Plains of Abraham, the deal was under the treaty was that all land ownership would come under English common law. And they issued land patents in Quebec. And I've seen several of them. They're written in French, but they are English common law land patents. In Ontario, about 80% of southern Ontario is under crown patents. And so they did quite a lot of that. And pre-West, what you're seeing here, pre that, what they would do is they would give them to honor the soldiers. So if you were a sergeant, you might get an honor of 100 acres in Ontario or Quebec or Nova Scotia. If you were a private, you might be 25 acres. If you were a lieutenant or higher, a captain and something like that might get 250 acres. it depends on what rank you had in Ontario, Quebec, and New Brunswick and Nova Scotia in order to see the land patents there. But out west, they were always 160 acres. And I'm about to show you why. In Western Canada, they would go along the 49th parallel. So it's 36 squares, okay? And each square is 640 acres. So, and it's divided into four, so 160 acres per square within the main square. And all the even numbered squares have crown patents in them. All the odd numbered squares might have crown patents in them. They also had fee simple crown grants. And I'll show you the difference in a minute here. So they started at the border of Ontario and Manitoba, and right at the 49th parallel, and then they would go across all of Manitoba with this, and then they'd move up and they'd go back across, and they'd move up and go back across. And that's how they did it. And they did the same in Saskatchewan. So they get to the border of Saskatchewan and Manitoba at the 49th parallel. They'd start in the one corner, they'd move across, and they did it in Alberta as well. It made it very simple. People in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, when they go to do the title searches, it's really kind of crazy easy to find if you have a crown patent or not, based on whether you're sitting in an even square or an odd square. Now, I've always said to people say, well, if it's an odd square, then I'm probably not going to have a crown patent. I said, not necessarily. In all the even squares, they did put crown patents. Everything that's even does have a crown patent. But in some of the odd squares, you will find crown patents. So I say, don't get dissuaded. Make sure you check to the crown grant, whether it is or it isn't. Because who knows, you might get lucky and have one. So what am I talking about?
This is excellent. Our members have been waiting for someone to present on the Allodial title for quite a while. So thank you, Doug.
Well, I want to open up a couple of there it is there. So here we go. Okay, so this particular one, and I'm going to blow it up a little bit so that I can show you the language in there that makes it what it is. So this is, as you can see up here, it's a crown. It's issued by Queen Victoria, the Dominion of Canada, which is in here, the Dominion of Canada. And it's issued to a guy called William Taylor Speed, S-P-E-E-D. And he is in the Provisional District of Assiniboine, okay, which is pre-1905. And in order to understand whether you have a crown patent or whether you just have something in fee simple, you need to see where it says here, William Taylor Speed, his heirs, okay, and I'm going to blow it up even further for you to see it over here, and assigns, and see that crazy little word there, forever? Well, that's a crown patent. And the day it was issued, I guess this would be the January, let's see, what was the date? January 1887. So 1887, right there, that's the day of issue. It's as alive today as it was in 1887 on his date of issue. This is a living document. This is not a locked document. This is not a historical, nice, oh, look at that. Isn't that a pretty nice historical document? No, this is a living document. And the reason that it is living is because of this. His heirs and assigns, and that key little word there, forever. That word means exactly what it's saying, forever. Why would they do that? Well, because this was meant to be either passed on through the heirs or to be sold, which would be an assign. You'd be an assignee if it was sold, and to maintain allodial title for generations. The United States, this is how I learned about it here in Canada, but I was in the US. All land in the United States, 100% of the land in the United States is under land patents down there. Every single square inch. Now, the American government doesn't want to let the American people know that, because the American government wants to enslave the American people the same way the Canadian government doesn't want you to know about this. Well, the Canadian government doesn't want you to know about this is because what they've done is that these documents, let's shrink that back down. These documents, this particular one, and all the others. And I'm going to show you a couple more before we get too far down the road here. I've got one here so this is 1839, okay? So this is pre-Confederation documentation. I'm sorry, I misspoke. We never confederated. Canada's never confederated. But what's funny is, so this one comes from 1839. So we'll go down to the bottom there and I'll blow that up so that you can see it right here as 1839. So pre-1867, which is pre-Dominion of Canada. But what's interesting is this document, okay, each one is different and the structure on them is similar, right? Where they use the parcel or tract of land situate lying and being in the township of blah, 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 in Dundas and so forth, and of our province and containing and so forth. So you look at the verbiage on these and it's very similar, but what the key phraseology here is right here. Let's see if I can move that out of the way for you. And here we go. Joseph Bedsford, his heirs and assigns forever. 1839. Isn't that interesting? Well, and that shows that now you have a crown patent. And this is the standard way of writing for crown patents. 1700s. I've got them from Nova Scotia and British Columbia, 1793 and 1796 or 97. And they all had heirs and assigns forever. So this is a living document. So why does the Canadian government not want you to know about it? Well, first and foremost, they don't want you to know about it because they're maritime jurisdiction, okay? And being that they don't want you to know for a simple reason is that these things are very valuable. In all the provinces, all of these patents are kept in safes. And in Alberta, they're kept in Calgary, in a safe in Calgary at Land Titles, and in Edmonton at Land Titles. In British Columbia, they're in Victoria. They're kept in a safe in Victoria at Land Titles. In Ontario, they're kept in a safe up in Peterborough, Ontario at Natural History. So why would they keep them in safes? Well, it's because they're extremely valuable. And what the Canadian government does is securitize them into bonds and then sells them onto the global stage. And they're literally selling our allodial title land to the bankers, the international bankers. And people say, well, if they don't recognize these dugs, how do we register our declaration? And I said, well, it's not a matter of them recognizing it. You don't need the de facto government to recognize it, but the international bankers certainly recognize it, and international law recognize your declaration. The Canadian government will default on the debt, and the bankers will come to claim the land that you have. And those that have taken and done the declaration and updated their crown patent, they can actually show that to the people that come along and say, hey, get out of this, we own it now. And they'll go, nope, I've updated my crown patent, it's mine and mine alone. You have been fraudulently sold these bonds that they securitized my crown patent in, and you need to go talk to the government because they did fraud on you. And sure enough, they leave you alone. As a matter of fact, we had one gentleman a couple of years back, been about 2 years ago now, with UN Drip had come to his farm and they had said, well, this is ours now and blah, 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 and you're going to start paying taxes to us and so on and so forth. And he showed them the declaration and the crown patent. And they said, well, we don't know what this is. Can we have copies of this? And he said, sure, take the copies with you. We'll get back to you. And he's never heard back from them since. I've got some really neat stuff that I dug out for you guys for tonight. What I find and I like about this is a lot. These are historical documents, and I love history. Okay. And just to see how they're done. Now, this was written after Queen Victoria's death, George V, right? Still under the Dominion of Canada. And it still has the verbiage, and very similar to the one that you saw in Ontario, very similar to the one that we had under the Assiniboia, which is Saskatchewan. Here it is here. Alexander Clifford Ruth, his heirs and assigns, right? forever right here. His heirs and assigns forever. And this is from British Columbia. And what's interesting here is this was done in, I believe, in the early 1900s, if we look at this. April of the year of our Lord, 1912. So 1912 in BC. And it's beautifully done. Now, because it's the early 1900s, it's a lot of typing, but you look at the way that it's written, and the people have taken their time to actually use cursive, which is the proper writing. We no longer teach our children this anymore. So if you put this in front of a 12-year-old, he probably wouldn't be able to read it because they don't teach cursive anymore. But it's beautifully done. The older ones I've had ones from the like I say, the 1700s and or very early 1800s that are all handwritten, and they're all written in cursive. I had one that it took me several weeks to figure out what they had written there because it looked like a chicken had walked across the page. This, I think, is one of the more beautiful documents. It's really, really old, and they taped it. This red stuff here is the tape, but you could see, and here's the yellow tape that they put on it. It's like 7 pages. Yeah, 6 pages. I'm sorry, 6 pages. I'll just blow it up a little bit here for you. And it's handwritten, as you can see down in here, and I'll scroll down a few pages. It's all beautifully written hand in cursive, and this was written for the Nanaimo and Esquimalt Rail Company. Okay, they gave them all this various land in Allodial where they built the railway, because under common law, this corporation would be known as a corporation aggregate, which could take on Allodial title. I want to get down to the bottom of this because a second. But as you can see, it's all cursive. It's all been handwritten out. Here you go. So the signatures on the bottom of this by the command and the undersecretary and the deputy. But what's interesting here, this is at Ottawa. Okay, so it came out of Ottawa. Yet this is for Vancouver Island. On the 21st day of April, in the year of our Lord, 1887. So 1887. But just the time it took to write this, the 6 pages, handwritten. Okay. Now, what's very interesting about this, I'm going to stop the share on this one, and I'm going to show you how the Nanaimo and Esquimalt Railway Company passed on allodial title to others. And this you probably won't see ever unless you're actually on over there and you would use this. It's called an indenture. Let's read this at the very beginning. It says, the Esquimalt and Nanaimo Railway Company of the one part and the Victoria Lumber and Manufacturers Company Limited on the other part. So what the Esquimalt and Nanaimo Railway Company have done is sold a piece of their patent, the 6 pages. Well, this will be, and it goes on to describe what it is that they're selling to this other company, right? Okay. So let's see if we can't find the magic words. But this is called an indenture. And this is a way of transferring allodial title from the Crown patent to another company through this indenture. And how do we know that? Well, I'm going to show you. And it's various pieces all the way up Vancouver Island. And this company is going to be logging and so on and so forth. Let me see if I can't find this. But it's, once again, if you look at this, this is all handwritten. There's no machines. This isn't typed. This has all been done by hand. And for somebody to do that and write this out the way it is, it's taken a long time to do it. To have and to hold the lands, so for Victoria Manufacturing Company Limited, okay, here we go. Here it is here. Blow that up nicely. Let's see. Their successors and assigns forever. Okay. So instead of heirs, because they are a corporation, successors and assigns forever. And this is how the Esquimalt-Nanaimo Railway passed on Allodial Title. So this company, they also sold land. When they were finished with it, they cleared the lumber off and so forth. And they said, well, we'll sell it to a farmer. Now it's cleared. So, and farmers then bought the land. And I've done on Vancouver Island, I've probably done, oh gosh, I would say easy 70 declarations under the indentures from Nanaimo Esquimalt Railway, the indenture, and there's several companies that got the indentures. This particular one is one, but there are other companies that had this as well. And there were also farmers that the railway company gave indentures to, which is kind of cool things. Now, I wanted to also give you a quick example of a fee simple title. Now, it looks very much the same as a crown patent. I've actually made this so that it's easier to read for everybody, except to have and to hold the name unto the grantee in fee simple. So what's a fee simple title? I'm going to show you what a fee simple title is. You'll appreciate it, but what I'm saying is you're not going to like it too much. Okay. Well, this is a modern title that everybody has on their houses today. Say, registered owner in fee simple. There it is, joint tenants. You're a renter. You're what they call a beneficial owner, but not the owner in fact. In other words, you don't have a allodial title, sadly. This is from British Columbia. They're pretty plain there. The ones in Ontario say registered owner and fee simple, but they don't call you joint tenants but that's what it means. And likewise, across the provinces, some of the provinces put in joint tenant, but they all have fee simple. And fee simple says pay your taxes and shut up. Well, what are taxes? That's just simple as anything else. It's just rent. So try not paying your rent, and the landlord, being the province, says, well, you don't pay your rent, we're coming to take your property. And they don't charge land tax. If you get your homeowners here have their tax assessment comes every year, and it's not for the land. They don't assess the land value, they assess the property. And people go, oh, Doug, what's property? I said, well, property is improvement to land, which is why you need a permit to do anything and everything on your land. I want to change my bathroom a little bit. So I want to, put a big shower in. And well, if you don't have a permit, you can't do that. I want to put in a double garage. Well, you got to have a permit to do that because it's not yours. The reason that you have to have a permit is because you don't own it. They don't own it either because it's the land. And they have no claim to the land, which is why they charge you property tax, because that's the only thing that they can put claim on. Okay. You've been doing a lot of study on sovereignty and so forth, right? So you understand the difference between what is property and what is land. And one of the big things in sovereignty is about the three elements of sovereignty, right?
Already talk about them.
Yeah. So the three elements of sovereignty are: number one is land under your feet. Number one, and that would be allodial title to land under your feet. Number two is the ability to raise an army. And number three is the ability to create money. That's a sovereign. Now, we can look at England as an example. So the Queen of England, Windsor Castle is her land. She has allodial title. So she has A, land under her feet, B, the ability to raise a military, which she does, and C, the ability to create money. So all the money that you look at the pound notes floating around in Great Britain, they all had Queen Elizabeth's face on it when she was alive. Okay. So that's sovereignty. So here in Canada in 1931, give you a little history lesson. The Statute of Westminster ended the Dominion of Canada, and the land that was held at the Court and Chancery in Great Britain was then turned back over to the provinces, and then because the provinces can hold allodial title, and onto the people. I asked if you want to join my Facebook group. There's a question: who holds the allodial title to the land in Canada? And the answer to that question is quite simple: we the people. We the people own all the land in Canada. In 1930, under the BNA Act 1930, all of the resources And all of the crown land that was held by the Dominion of Canada in Ottawa was then turned back over to the provinces and onto the people in 1930. Now, Danielle Smith won a case last year in the Supreme Court of Canada based on the BNA 1930, where the federal government says, oh, no, that no longer applies. She won. It does apply. All the resources in the province of Alberta and all the various provinces belong to the management of the government of the province, but more importantly, to the people of those provinces. At the end of the day, yes, there's these crown patents have been issued, but there's also, if you saw from the map, there's still a lot of land in the provinces that still belong to we the people today. And we have the mismanagement of the federal authority that likes to take our crown patents and then securitize them and then sell them out onto the world stage. So how do you go about doing this? What's the simple steps of how do I update my crown patent if I have one? So you have to go to the land titles, you do a title search, and I say always go down to the very beginning, start with the crown patent or the crown grant. It's known as a crown grant. So get your crown grant, take a look at it. If it's a crown grant, as we went through tonight with heirs and assigns forever, wonderful. Now you know you have a patent. The next step is to get all of the titles from the original crown patent right to your modern title. It's called chain of titles. You get that, including your modern title. Now you've got what's necessary to do a declaration. At which point you'll make a declaration of updating that crown patent into your common law name. Very simple, Karen, you introduced yourself tonight with your common law name, Karen of the family. It's like me, Douglas of the family force. That's the common law name. And that would be on your declaration. You do not put it into your what you think is the name on your driver's license. You have to make it definitive. Okay. And it's very straightforward. Now, I've been helping people for the last 16 years here in Canada write declarations. I work off of donations, so there is a donation that I do, but I've now have about 11 iterations from across Canada in the various provinces, including 2 French ones that I do for people for their declarations. If you're interested, there is a booklet that I wrote a few years ago now, a couple of years. I just updated it actually recently. Again, I try to keep current with the booklet, and you can get that through the website of the Myth is Canada for a donation, and I send out the PDF. Please, if you do the e-transfer with the donation, in the message box on the e-transfer, please put in your email address, because I get the e-transfer and I don't know who it comes from other than there's a nice name on it. John Smith sent me a nice donation. In order for me to get the booklet out, I need an email address. So in the message part, put in your email address. But that's really it in a nutshell. I covered pretty much the full spectrum of what we were looking at tonight for Allodial Title and how that works and what we've done here in Canada. I've given you a bit of a history lesson and so forth.
Thank you, Doug. This is so great. I think that a lot of our listeners are really excited about the solutions they're offering, especially this declaration. And I love that word forever.
I actually had an attorney. I had a client years ago back in Ontario, and she kept arguing with her attorney, and she says, Doug, this guy, he just keeps getting telling me they're historical documents and they don't mean anything. Would you mind coming down to his office and meeting with him? And I said, well, if he wants to, sure, why not? I don't mind. I'll take a few minutes to do that. And so I get on there, and he's like, you're a con man. He's trying to say I'm a con man, and you're giving this my friend here, my client here, false information. I said, really? So you've read these documents? He said, I don't have to read the documents. I know what they are. They're historical documents. I said, well, let's take a minute here. And I pulled one out and I showed it, and I said, here it says, reads right here. What does that statement say? Heirs and assigns. What's that word there? What's that word there? I said, that's forever. I said, how do you define forever? And he told me to get the F out of his office.
Oh my gosh. Okay, before we get into our questions from our listeners, I just want to ask you, okay, so I've gone and I've got my crown grant, I've got all the titles, the chain of titles, etc. I've hired you to get my declaration, updating my crown patent to my common law name. Now, what if the government ignores me and wants my land no matter what I've done? What is the solution?
The only way today that they could take your land is if you don't pay your taxes.
Right.
Okay. And in all the provinces now, they no longer take you to court for that. They always go to a judge in chambers.
Excellent.
No, that's not good
Well, I mean,
because
like it's
because they get a seizure order from a judge in chambers. Okay. In other words, you don't get your day in court. And I think because over the years, I've actually done probably several hundred of these. When I say several hundred of these declarations over the years, I've been at it for 16 years. And I've said to people, I will support my declaration. If they take you to court, now you can't go to court, they have to take you to court. If they drag you into court, I
yes,
will come in and I will set precedent
right.
in the court on the for your declaration. I support my own work. And this fear that they have that because if the minute I make precedent in court on your behalf, then it activates every single crown patent that's ever been written here in Canada as legitimate in their jurisdiction, which is the last thing they want, because they've been fraudulently securitizing them and selling them on the world stage to bankers. And as soon as that, boy, oh boy, it would cause the government to collapse because
Right.
the bankers would come at them and go, wait a minute, you don't have the right to do that. This is fraud. You've sold us, 1.7 trillion dollars worth of fraud, and they won't take you to court. So I say to people, pay your taxes, because they'll go to a judge in chambers. And I had a client several years ago now who refused to pay his taxes. He said, no, Doug, I'm not going to pay. And he went on for about 5 years without paying his taxes. And then one morning, about 2 a.m. in the morning, the RCMP broke his door down, and they dragged him and his wife out of bed, put him in handcuffs, and put him in jail for 2 months. And then they took a dumpster and they brought it to the house the next day, and they emptied all the contents of the house into the dumpster and threw it in the garbage.
Hmm.
And everything, all his possessions were gone.
Hmm.
And then they held an auction. About a month later, they held an auction for the house and sold it. And they had all these penalties of interest and all this other stuff was on there. And the house was worth about 300,000. I think they sold it. They had to get market value for it. And then they let him and his wife out of prison, out of jail after about 60 days. And they gave them a check for $20,000.
Hmm.
And that was it. That's what they got. And it broke my heart because I said, look, the amount of taxes you owe isn't that much. So and he says, no, I can win. We can win. And I'm like,
I think what I was referring to, I think, was that because if we're in their court, it's a maritime jurisdiction, and if we can meet the judge outside of their court, and then we're declaring that we are, a sovereign, it's like we're sharing that we want to make sure that we're in the correct jurisdiction and that we're not consenting to their process.
but here's the beautiful thing. If they were, let's say that you had a disagreement with them and they said, well, we're going to take you to court to settle this disagreement over this crown patent. Okay. And you get to court, and you give me a call. They say, Doug, you're my professional witness. Will you come to court and defend your work? And I say, absolutely. And I would come to court and I would get sworn in, put on the stand. And before I did anything, the first thing I would do with the judge is I would ask him a couple of quick questions, because I want this to be a court of competent jurisdiction to hear this matter. And the first thing I would want to make sure that we were under English common law, because that's when these documents were written. So I would ask the judge certain questions to bring us into that, and he would respond in a certain way, and I know what the responses would be, and then I would say, "Thank you, Judge. We're now a court of competent jurisdiction to hear this matter." Then we would go through what a crown grant is, a crown patent is, heirs and assigns forever on the land, blah blah blah, tract and parcel of land, and so forth. And I would put him in a box where he would have no choice but to agree. under English common law that these things are active today as they were when they were first written, because that beautiful word forever, and that would be precedent.
Mhm.
In other words, you would win against the crown,
Mhm.
and then you could hear this big sound coming out of Ottawa going, oh,
The people are waking up.
that precedent
Yeah,
sets across Canada.
excellent. Thank you, Doug. Okay, we're gonna open it up to our listeners. We have Al.
Where do they derive their authority, the crown? Like in Canada, if the federal government does not have a right to exist, and they're operating by law of the sea, what are they doing, making land patents and all that stuff? Like, can we just not go grab crown land
No,
and occupy it and say I'm a sovereign? And then if they drag us to their courts, then we're not done. We're sovereign. We're natural flesh and blood. They have no jurisdiction. So what are they
the
doing selling our stuff?
The problem we have, and it's done actually through consent, through assumptive and presumptive contracts and consent. Look, you're very lucky to have this wonderful group that you're working with, that you're awake in, but you walk down the street, any street, doesn't matter whether you're in Calgary or Edmonton or Toronto or Vancouver or, Red Deer, Alberta, for example, a little tiny, or Saskatoon, and 99% of the people, you could stop and talk to them about this stuff, and they'll look at you like you're from planet Mars. They think that you're crazy. What do you mean? We have a de facto. What's a de facto government? What do you mean that they're stealing our wealth? Well, they are, and to their benefit and to your detriment. Taxes are illegal. No, we need taxes because who will build the roads, and who takes care of the and people are just absolutely have no clue. And it's really hard living with the knowledge that I have, and with the knowledge, I'm sure, Al, you probably have the same problem I have, living with the knowledge you have. But the problem that you have, if you were to go suddenly grab some crown land and start put stakes in, and I'm going to take this for myself, they'll send people with guns and gold badges, and they will say you will either vacate the land or we'll shoot you. And that's the problem, because we don't have enough people awake at this time in order to make the changes that we need to have. They are de facto. They know they're de facto. Justin Trudeau in January of 22 stated very clearly in Quebec, he said, look, the Constitution Act 1982 does not apply to us because of the Quebec problem. And he was 100% correct. It's never been ratified. They don't even have maritime jurisdiction here in Canada, because if you understand that the 82 Act, they had the Queen's Proclamation, right? The Queen's Proclamation said that this act will come into full force and effect subject to Section 59. Another proclamation will be written under the Great Seal of Canada, right? Hence, allowing this to come into full force and effect. Now I paraphrase. So you go to Section 59 of the Act, and it says, oh, go to Section 58. Section 58 takes you to 23(1)(a). 23(1)(a) states very clearly, and it needs to be repealed. 23(1)(a). If you repeal it, then Canada is no longer bilingual, and it gives the provinces the ability to use any other language or multiple languages they want to teach in all the schools and use in there. So they could have Spanish or Ukrainian or Russian or Chinese, by having that little clause repealed. Well, guess who didn't agree to that? Quebec. Quebec said, no freaking way. Canada's bilingual, French and English, period. Repeal that. Did we lose that? No, no, no. And they've never signed off. And so that act, they've never had a second proclamation. So that their maritime jurisdiction is de facto. It's illegal and unlawful. It's the same way in 1931 when the Dominion of Canada ended. Section 11 of the Statute of Westminster allowed Canada, if you're not a colony, and there's nothing between a colony and a sovereign nation, then if you're no longer a colony, then you must be a sovereign nation. And all the provinces became sovereign nations at that time. Why? Because we were supposed to elect our delegates, send them to a place where they could write a constitution called a constitutional convention, and write a constitution for a federal authority. Never happened. And in 1982, between 1982 and 1985, the de facto government, maritime jurisdictional government, then incorporated all the provinces as subcorporations of the parent. If you don't believe me, go stand out in front of the legislatures in any of the provinces, and the prominent flag flying is the Canadian flag, the one behind me. See the one behind me there? Except, look at this. It's a pirate ship.
Yes, they're all pirates.
Well, it's a Jolly Roger, and that's how the pirates worked back in the day.
Right.
They would fly a friendly flag until they got within cannon range. They'd pull the friendly flag down and pull up the Jolly Roger, and off they'd go.
And that's why too, the voting system is a myth as well, because corporations never vote in their CEOs. They're always appointed.
Exactly. But we here in Canada, we don't. I've said this many times. There is no political solution. You can't vote your way out of tyranny.
No, Norman, go ahead.
Hi, Doug. Thank you for your presentation. The question that I have is the control that Allodial Title would give you on your land in terms of the discretion or control that you have on what you can do on your land. So I'd like to find out what is how far you can push that, because usually when you buy land and you want to build something, you have to go and give them plans and drawings and whatever. If it's a business, what kind of business, so on and so forth. But when you have a Allodial Title, where's the line? What can you do in terms of the region, for example, where you are? That's who basically makes the decision, really.
Yeah, the municipalities and the RMs and so forth. If you were in the US, you would go down to land titles and you would register your updating of the land patent, your declaration. You would register that at land titles in the US.
Yeah.
And then land titles would take you off the tax roll. And they would inform the city or the RM or whatever the municipality that you're living in that you're no longer on the tax roll and that you're no longer under their control. And they would respect that. They would respect that because it's constitutional. Okay. But here in Canada, we don't have that. Canada does not have a constitution. Canada does not have a de jure government. We don't have in any of the provinces. None of the provinces are de jure. They're all de facto. And we've never had a constitutional convention to seat de jure government here in Canada. The Dominion of Canada was a united colony. The B&A Act is not a constitution, for it constitutes nothing but a dictatorship for a governor general to sit in the corporation sole known as the Dominion of Canada. That document died in 1901. In 1931, it became a dead document. And I've said this to high-ranking politicians. I said, in what other country, please point to another country that has a photocopy of what you call our Constitution? Because that's all it is. It's a photocopy. It's not even the original, because the original is dead. It doesn't have any standing in law. In order for the de facto government to recognize these crown patents, it would be to their absolute horror and detriment. Okay. So what can you do, especially now as it's getting closer and closer with tyranny coming? Here in Canada, the only defense that you have with these now is against the United Nations, which understands the international law and they recognize these things, and the international banking community, which also stands under international law and will recognize these things when they come and knock it. But until then, it's good to have. It's a backup. I've had people last year on Vancouver Island. There was a couple of farms that had the gates on the front. And they put a panel up with their declaration, their crown patent, and a nice letter saying, "Please understand that this is we've updated our patent and we have the Allodial Title. And if you want permission to come on, you need to call this number to ask for permission to come on the land." And in one particular instance, there was a guy that came there. A person that was with him was armed. And they were from the water department. And they said, "We demand that you get out of the way and we're going to go check your well and blah, blah, blah." And he said, "Sorry, this is Allodial Title and you need and I do not give you my permission. So if you do come on my land without my permission, that's criminal trespass and I will have the police come and arrest you." He's like, "Well, you can't do that," and blah, blah, blah. And he says, why is this guy here with a gun? What's he here to do? I'm unarmed. And I'm telling you, you cannot come on my land. So the guy says, well, I need a copy of this stuff. So he said, okay, he closed the gate, locked it, went to the house and brought back the declaration and the patent, a copy of that for him. And he handed it to him. And the guy went away and he got a call a couple of weeks later from him. And they said, well, we don't understand what this is. And I've talked to attorneys and blah, blah, blah. So I'm coming by in a couple of days and I'm going to get access to your well. And so he waited and waited, and he's still waiting to this day for that guy to come back, and he has yet to show up.
So great, Doug. Thank you, Norman, for a great question. Gonna move over to Ocean Native Enterprise. What is your name?
Jason,
Hi, Jay.
Hey, Jason, I know you. The last time I saw you was a few weeks ago now, I'm guessing.
that's right. That's right. So there's been a few updates. Curious about the Allodial Title. I understand that you're still in the great province of Wild Rose Country, Alberta. I'd like to probably, if chance, meet with you face to face.
Yeah,
We're doing
absolutely. You still have my number. I mean, we did a lot with you with Ethics Over Fear a couple of years ago.
Right, that's right. What I'm doing is I'm working with a group of farmers right now, and I don't know if they are on Allodial Title, but when we're coming close to the 5 minutes after midnight with the tyranny in regards to things that are happening in this jurisdiction we know as Canada, Alberta, I guess, would be our best bet, but we're starting to do something in the farming sector, in the food sector,
Yep.
okay, on solution. And we want to protect the farmers that we're going to be working with. So obviously, yeah, I need to meet with you.
But
Okay.
here's the other thing that you might want to also look at doing, and this is a little more research for you, are PMAs. And that will help also non-statutory PMAs. And that can help, but I can go into that in person. So give me a call. You got my number.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jason, for joining us. Lynn, go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much. This has been so informative. Doug, I actually had ordered your booklet a few years ago, and I got my different lines of title, but there was no patent available.
Did you ask for the original Crown grant? When you're doing these title searches, that's the other thing I should mention. Anybody who's going to do a title search, don't ask for a Crown patent. You're looking for the Crown grant, the original Crown grant, okay? Because they'll tell you, oh no, there's no Crown patent here.
Oh, okay.
Because that's not what they know it as. They'll look for it and they'll go, nope, there's no Crown patent, and they won't say there's a Crown grant because you didn't ask for a Crown grant. But that's what you have to ask for, is the Crown grant. Because the real term for this is not a Crown patent. It's a Crown grant made patent. Okay?
Okay.
I just use the common term Crown patent, but they're all Crown grants. As you can see with the one in fee simple, that's a Crown grant in fee simple. Then there's the Crown grant made patent. Okay, but they're all Crown grants. So just ask for the Crown grant.
Oh, interesting. Okay. And then the other thing is I did have somebody look at it and kind of help me go over it. But when they looked at my property, it was actually my property sits on 2 of those blocks. So how would then I deal with that one?
When you say it sits on 2 of those blocks, it means that you might have it under 2 different Crown grants, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Well, then that's what you want to find, is the original 2 Crown grants that make up your property. Funny enough, I just had one that had 4 Crown grants for one piece of property. 4. Well, they were issued as smaller. They were 25 acres, and one was a 50 acre, and one was 150 acre. And then the 4th one was like 75 acres. And it was funny, they were all beside each other, right? This person was like literally right in the middle, right in the middle, with like 30 acres. And it touched on all 4 of them.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Mine's actually a city property too. So
I've seen in Calgary, especially, they did these new suburbs. Well, it belonged to the railway, but they never put lines through, and it was sold. And so they're all under Crown patents. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool, because to find something like that, usually you don't see that, like in Edmonton on the rail lines coming through, and then you'd think, oh, okay, well, they had allodial title, but they actually sold the land in fee simple. They never actually transferred the crown patent to the landowner. They re-granted the land. The province re-granted the land, but they re-granted it in fee simple, not in heirs and assigns for.
Interesting. Thank you so much. I have one more question, and it's about, I was curious about what your thoughts are of the impact of Terranet on the allodial title in Manitoba and Ontario.
I think Terranet is probably the most horrible thing in Ontario. My friend, he's probably the number one expert on Terranet in Ontario, and he's done multiple shows. I had him on a roundtable. McDermott is the last name. And he goes into the detail of the horror of Terranet. You know, I think they're now looking at Terranet for British Columbia now as well.
Well, thank you so much. This has been awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Great to have you here. Go ahead, Lauren.
Do you have to have a PMA before you can apply for allodial
Nope.
title?
And no, and you're not actually applying for allodial title. Okay. What you're doing is you're doing a title search on your land, okay, down to the original Crown grant. Okay, and then you could go for, and then if it is a Crown grant made patent, then you could do then you'll take on the rest of that up to your modern title, and then make the declaration of assignment and bring it into your common law name. Now a PMA can be utilized as well with allodial title, but you want to do a non-statutory PMA. Okay, do you mind if I take a couple of minutes here to go into PMAs, Karen?
We actually have a PMA online course.
Oh, okay. Well, and I don't teach a course, but I work with Angela from Sovereign by Design, and she offers a really nice course. It's a little pricey. It's $2,500, but it's well worth it. It's 8 hours. Goodness, this is really, really well done. There's 3 elements of the PMA: the Constitution, the bylaws, and then the membership application. And that's it. Basically, my package is the boilerplate of build it yourself, fill in the blanks, almost not quite fill in the blanks, but you know what I mean. It breaks it down into you know the various sections of the Constitution that you'll need to write, and then the various sections of bylaws that you'll need to write, and gives examples of stuff like that. And they're really good to have, especially if you have a farm and you want to do a farmer's market and you want to involve your neighbors' farms and so forth. I know in Vancouver Island did a couple of there's a couple of them now that have been set up to do just that specifically. I like the idea of non-statutory PMAs. Karen, I'm guessing that your course on PMAs have also been assisting people for education for kids to be homeschooled. You can set up a PMA for that. For your regular business, if you run a shop of any kind, you know, a tea shop, et cetera, you can set up PMAs. They're not that hard to do, and they can be cost effective. Like a lot of times, been seeing there's, oh well, for $10,000 we could do this and we'll write it for you and stuff like. But it's not. They're not that hard to write, right? If you have the boilerplate to work from.
So thank you so much for your information. It's very valid. Thank you.
Hey, Laura Jane, I would love for you to meet Doug here. Laura Jane is actually the creator and our facilitator of our PMAs.
Karen, thank you. I've been listening quite intently and absolutely non-statutory. I would never do anything statutory around PMAs. I mean, that would defeat the whole purpose. But yeah, I've created it. So I'd love to send you the work that I've done, Doug, and you can have a look. And I am familiar with Angela as well. I've looked at her material. So it's been really great helping and working with a lot of healthcare. And I did a lot in Vancouver Island, and I did a little tour up there, talked to a lot of folks.
Some of the nicest people in British Columbia are on Vancouver Island.
Yeah. I used to live there, so yay. When I was in Comox, Courtney area, Moira told me the story about her and her husband using their allodial title to keep the water police off their property and how they educated them. So that was beautiful.
Yeah, I know. I told you that was the story. I didn't want to use their name, but that's the people that.
Thank you, Laura Jane. Karen Hanna actually put the PMA course in the chat. Many of our members here have taken the course and have created their PMAs. That's very exciting. And our course is only $600. Okay, Simon and Diane, go ahead.
Hi, Doug. Wondering if you've ever heard of a Form AP1 from Land Registry in the UK, where you can re-register with a different authority? You can put yourself down as the authority instead of the local authorities, the local municipality. And apparently that takes you right out of their jurisdiction, with the only caveat being that you have to take care of the road outside of your property.
No, I actually I've not heard of that. I know that several years ago in the United Kingdom, what was interesting is that the Crown, which for centuries claimed all of England and Scotland and Ireland and Wales as allodial title, they held the land in allodial. But decades ago, that changed. And it changed considerably. That if the Crown, Charles and so forth, they no longer have allodial title to the British Isles. They have Windsor Castle. There's a few other land pieces that they have, but the land actually all belongs to the people now in allodial in Great Britain and Scotland, Ireland. Well, Ireland joined, or part of Ireland joined the EU. Which they gave up their sovereignty for enslavement. Is it the Maastricht Treaty that they signed on it, or the Nice Treaty? I can't remember, because they scratched the name Maastricht off of it and they put Nice on it. Didn't change any of it. Wales, England, and Scotland, the people actually own the land now, the great majority of the land. And that was done decades ago now. I think it was done under Queen Victoria.
Thank you, Simon, Diane. Appreciate you.
So what I'm saying is it doesn't surprise me that you can do that in England.
Thank you, Doug. Like all your time and energy that you're putting into this, so appreciate you.
The whole idea, Karen, is to get this out, this information out to as many people as possible, which is why people ask me to come and speak. And how much do I charge? I say I don't charge anything. Why? Because I want everybody to have an opportunity to hear what I have to say. And it limits people who can't afford to. So if you know, I work off a donation, so you pass the hat around.
This is why we offer our Monday calls. 100%. I love it. Okay, we're going to move on to Lonnie.
Hey, Doug. Good to see you, brother.
How you doing, Lonnie?
I'm doing well, thank you. Hey, a couple things just came to mind though. Is now once you have your patent, do I understand correctly that you also get any mines and minerals that are on that land, etc., as well?
Absolutely. Once again, ownership from the soles of your feet to the center of the earth, and anything that's under that land is yours in perpetuity.
Okay, thank you. And something else, because of I understand there's another push going on to get farmers and everyone to license their wells, dugouts, etc., all their water. So I know people have done this in the past because they did have a push on that a few years ago too, and I know people that did it. So if you do gain your patent, then you could take that all back as well, I bet.
Yeah, they were trying to do that over on the Vancouver Island last summer, but because there's a lot of unmetered wells on Vancouver Island, and they wanted to come in and put the meter on your well, and then tell you what you can and cannot do with your water, because for some reason these communists believe that it all belongs to them.
Right. Yeah. So you could tell them to take that if you signed on to that. You could tell them to take that and stick it where the sun don't shine.
No, you've got to be more diplomatic than that.
That's null and void.
Yes. Once you have allodial title, everything on the land, the trees, the grass, and everything under the land. And I'll give you a quick example of how this works. So in the United States, in Nevada, okay, they had two types of land patents. They had underground land patent for mining companies, and they had land patent for the surface that went 18 inches. And that was for the ranchers. So the ranchers had the surface rights, okay, for the cattle. And the miners, the government would issue a land patent for the miner to go gold mining. Now, the problem the miner had is that he had to go to the person with surface rights and cut a deal. He couldn't just walk across, because that's allodial title. It belonged to the ranchers, 18 inches. So here in Canada, we never had that. So we didn't have two different types. We have one type. And if you read the originals, okay, I didn't get into it too deeply because that would take it too long. Queen Victoria reserved the rights for timber. She reserved the rights sometimes for water. She reserved the mineral rights sometimes on and different. But now that she's dead and gone, and she left no heirs and successors, okay, because that under the Dominion of Canada, Section 2 was repealed. And so there were no heirs and successors. So today, all of those reservations, right, for the mineral rights, for the water rights, for the timber rights, etc., are null and void because there is no claim. King Charles, I think that's his name, Charles III, he has no claim to any land in Canada. None. That's the beautiful part of that.
Thanks, Doug.
Great questions, Lonnie. Thank you. Okay, we only have a few more minutes left. Steve, go ahead.
Hi, can you see that?
Yes.
Oh, you're Ontario. Cool.
I got mine. I haven't done the rest of it, but I'm planning to get the chain of title, and then maybe I'll contact you and we'll do that declaration. But do I understand that it has to be posted for a period of time to become?
Yes. Yeah, you go to a community bulletin board. I've had people do it at Walmart, for example, the library, community center, anywhere where you've got a good bunch of traffic going by, and you take a photocopy of the declaration, you put it up, then you take a timestamp photograph, and you come back 7 days later. And if it's not there, you put up another one and you take a timestamp photograph of it, because you don't know whether the last one was taken down 30 seconds before you got there or whenever. But you have to do that for 30 days.
30
So,
days. Okay.
30 days.
I heard
it's
61 days, but anyway.
No, well, it's the same way, by the way, the government, let it be the provincial or the federal, they have what they call the Gazette. And when they pass a statute, goes through and it goes to royal assent, okay? And then it goes into the Gazette for 30 days. And if nobody complains about it, it becomes law within that province or federally. But if you complain once, they have to pull it out of the Gazette and they have to deal with your complaint, and then they have to re-Gazette it for another 30 days.
Okay.
So that's been there for hundreds of years here in British Parliament as well as the Canadian Parliament, and they still do it to this day.
Mhm.
So if you ever have a bad, what you think is a bad law coming across, complain when they Gazette it.
Have you had any complaints on any of the declarations that you've been involved with?
None at all. Never.
Okay.
I think it's mostly because people are ignorant to what it is in the first place. The way I write the declaration, it's very clear that it's only what you have on your survey for the land, period. That's all you're making a claim for, is
Yeah.
what you own. So anybody who would have a complaint would have to say, oh, well, he's exceeded his survey. He's actually claiming more than what he should have. And there's
Yeah.
2 clauses within the declaration ensuring that that doesn't happen.
And you also have to put your meets and bounds
No,
in your
no,
declaration, no?
in some states, they require that. But
Okay.
in Canada, we never used meets and bounds.
Okay. I'll yield now.
Thank you, Steve. We just have one of the main questions in the chat is, where do they find their land patent or crown grant? I'm assuming that with land title
Titles.
office in their town or city.
Yeah, land titles office. Most of the provinces, sometimes they go into the heritage over in Ottawa. Now, in my booklet, I have all of the hyperlinks to online, so to do online searches in every province. And it's all there if you wanted to get the booklet. But yes, land titles, and all the provinces have stuff online. And some of the provinces have sent to Ottawa into what they call the heritage. But if they can't find them, like people were having trouble in Saskatchewan a couple of years ago finding their crown grants, and somebody got the bright idea of, well, let's go to Ottawa and check out the heritage website, and sure enough, they found a whole bunch of them on the heritage website there. And so yeah.
And then Ron is asking, if you have old family land that was homesteaded, is that the same, still rented even if it's paid in full?
No, if it's in fee simple, it's not a patent, and there's nothing you can do from that point forward. It can't be changed at this. If we ever get to the point of seating a de jure government in the provinces, then the de jure government can actually issue new crown patents, or they wouldn't even be called crown patents; they'd be called land patents. It could issue new land patents to people for allodial title. I think that would be wonderful.
Absolutely. I'm just going to share with all our listeners that I'll be sharing all of Doug's information in our newsletter so that you can reach out to him. If you own land, to create your declaration, I highly recommend it. Doug, you are a force for good. We are so grateful for you being here. When we raise our hands, it means we're clapping for you.
The other thing too, guys, if you do email me, and you might write a bit of a book in the email, one of the best things to do is put your phone number in there, because I get literally hundreds of emails, and it's very difficult. I don't type very well. So it's much easier for me to pick up the phone and give you a quick call and go through it that way. So if you're looking to get further information from me via email, please include your phone number and I will call you.
Excellent. I want to remind all of the private members, we have a powerful talk tomorrow night on our private member call. And yes, everyone, you're doing awesome. Together we rise.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you, Karen. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Night, everybody.
Bye
Thank
for
you,
now.
Doug. Thank you, Karen, everybody.
Thanks, Karen.
Great evening. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Doug.
Great. Good night.
Right.
Bye.